Hello and welcome to another edition of The Deep Dive. The energy is really high today because we're jumping into a topic that literally shaped the nation we live in.
Yeah, it's a huge one.
It really is. Now, you are listening to a special deep dive focused on the full summary for UPSC by the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel.
That's right.
And before we get into the heavy lifting, I have a really humble request for you. Please subscribe to the channel.
It makes a massive difference.
It really does. And if you are capable, please support us on Patreon so that we can keep bringing this super useful content to you.
We definitely need to give a massive shout out to all our current supporters.
Oh, absolutely. Your help is absolutely vital in creating this content. We just couldn't do it without you.
Definitely not.
Also, please remember to hit that like button and share your valuable comments. We read them, and they really help us improve.
Keep them coming.
Yeah. And just a quick resource alert before we begin. Free notes with practice previous year questions, or PYQs, are available right now on the public Telegram channel.
Which is a great resource on its own.
Right. But for those of you who want to go the extra mile, if you want access to all videos of this series at once, along with organized premium notes, you should join the private Telegram library.
Those premium notes are gold. They have detailed notes, extra PYQs, and model mains answers.
Exactly. So just DM on the Telegram public channel to join.
Do it. You won't regret it.
So, setting the stage for today, we have a massive topic, which is planning in India.
Yes, the big one.
We are decoding Chapter 18 of Sanjeev Verma's Indian Economy, and to make sure we leave absolutely no stone unturned, we're also pulling in some clarity-boosting concepts from Vivek Singh's book.
This is actually one of my favorite topics because it's not just economic history.
Right.
It's literally the blueprint of India's identity. We are looking at how India moved from a command-style economy to a market-oriented one.
And why we eventually swapped the iconic Planning Commission for NITI Aayog.
Exactly. We are going to look at the why, the how, and the what now.
So let's unpack this. I want to take us back to the very beginning, the genesis.
Right back to 1947.
Yeah, 1947. India is newly independent. The flag is going up.
Yeah.
But the bank accounts are basically empty.
Very empty.
The big question you have to ask is, why do we need planning at all? I mean, why couldn't the government just step back, set up some basic laws, and let the market do its thing?
Like the U.S. model.
Exactly. The U.S. didn't have five-year plans, right?
It's a fundamental question. And to understand the answer, you really have to look at the context provided in Sanjeev Verma's text.
Okay, lay it out for us.
In 1947, the Indian economy wasn't just poor, it was structurally shattered.
Drained by colonial rule.
Exactly. We had been completely drained. But specific to economics, we were trapped in what economists call the vicious cycle of poverty.
The vicious cycle. Let's break that down for the listener.
Sure. It's a concept often associated with Ragnar Nurks. Imagine a circle.
Okay, a circle.
You start with low income. Because you have a low income, you have low savings.
Because you're spending everything you have just to survive.
Right. You can't save if you're starving. And because you have low savings, there is low investment in the economy.
No money in the banks to lend out.
Exactly. Low investment means you aren't building factories or machines, which leads to low productivity.
And low productivity leads right back to...
Real income, yes. You
Yeah.
are completely trapped.
Wow.
And the private sector at that time was tiny. I mean, the Tatas and Birlas existed, sure.
But they couldn't lift the whole country.
Right. They didn't have the massive capital required to build huge steel plants or dams or power grids.
Because those projects have long gestation periods, right?
Yes,
And
exactly.
just to clarify, gestation period means the time between spending the money and actually seeing a profit.
Precisely. If you build a massive dam, you might not see a single rupee of return for 15 years.
A private businessman in 1947 just couldn't wait 15 years.
They would go bankrupt on day one.
So you're saying the invisible hand of the market was basically paralyzed because there was no money to move it.
That's a really vivid way to put it, yeah. The economy needed what economists call a big push.
A big push.
It needed a massive injection of investment that the private sector simply couldn't provide. If the government hadn't stepped in to plan and invest, nothing would have happened.
We would have just spun around in that vicious cycle forever.
We really would have. We were stuck at what is sometimes called the Hindu rate of growth.
Right, that stagnant, low growth phase.
Yeah.
So planning was a necessity, but there was also like a global vibe shift happening at the time, wasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. This wasn't just India making this stuff up in a vacuum.
Yeah, you have to look at the world stage.
Right. Remember the global context. This was post-Great Depression.
So the capitalist markets in the West had just crashed spectacularly in the 1930s.
Spectacularly. Meanwhile, the Soviet Union, despite all its massive political issues, had shown the world something interesting.
That planning could work?
Yeah, that state-led planning could rapidly industrialize a backward agrarian nation.
So at that time, planning was seen as the modern solution, almost like how we view AI today.
In a way, yes, it was seen as a scientific, rational way to allocate resources.
It wasn't just an ideological choice.
No, it was considered the smart thing to do. You don't leave your newly independent nation's fate to the chaos of the market. You engineer it.
That makes total sense. It was about survival and jump-starting the engine.
Exactly.
But this brings up a tension that I think confuses a lot of people reading the sources. We often hear about planning versus the market economy.
Right, like they're at war.
Yeah, like it's a boxing match. Do you really have to choose one or the other?
That is the false binary that Sanjeev Verma explicitly warns us against.
A false binary.
Yeah, there is this misconception that if you have a market economy, you don't need planning. But Verma argues that they are actually complements, not substitutes.
Complements. Like peanut butter and jelly.
Maybe more like an engine and a steering wheel.
Well, I like that.
Think of it this way. The market economy is excellent for efficiency. It's great for deciding what to produce in the short term based on profit and demand. It handles those micro decisions really well.
If people want blue jeans, the market will magically produce blue jeans.
Exactly. But the market has massive blind spots.
What kind of blind spots?
Well, it doesn't naturally care about regional balance. It will invest in Mumbai because there are roads and ports there.
But it will completely ignore a remote village in the Northeast.
Right, because it's quote-unquote inefficient to go there. And the market doesn't naturally care about the environment or future generations either.
So the market is short-sighted.
It is profit-sighted, and that is exactly where planning comes in.
Okay.
Planning is necessary for the macro perspective. It charts the long-term path. It ensures that while we grow, we don't leave entire sections of society behind.
It's about sustainable development.
Yes. So going back to that analogy from our notes, the market drives the car because it's the engine of efficiency.
But planning provides the map and the destination.
Exactly. You wouldn't drive a fast car without knowing where you're going.
And you wouldn't want a paper map trying to physically drive the car either.
That's where the balance lies. Even the most capitalist nations have some form of strategic planning.
Right.
In India, the state acts as the architect of the long-term vision, while the market acts as the builder.
Okay, so let's look at how this map has actually changed over the years. We had 12 distinct 5-year plans before we finally switched systems.
That's a lot of maps.
It is. And Vivek Singh's text helps us break this down beautifully. To make it digestible, we can broadly divide all these plans into 2 distinct phases.
Phase 1 being what we call directed planning.
Directed planning.
Yeah.
That covers roughly the first plan through the 6th plan.
Yeah.
Directed sounds a bit, well, controlling.
Oh, it was extremely controlling. In this phase, the government was the major doer in the economy.
They were running the show.
They controlled what we call the commanding heights of the economy.
The commanding heights, like steel and mining.
Steel, mining, heavy machinery, telecommunications, banking. The government decided what was produced, where it was produced, and often what the final price would be.
So this is where the public sector is the undisputed protagonist of the Indian economy.
Yes. And this is where we see those famous economic models come in, the ones that UPSC students spend hours memorizing.
The models are so crucial. Let's start with the first plan, 1951 to 1956. This is based on the Harrod-Domar model.
The Harrod-Domar model.
Break that down for us. What is the core logic of that model?
It's actually a very elegant formula when you look closely at Vivek Singh's breakdown. The model basically says that the rate of growth, which we'll call G, depends on 2 variables.
Okay, what are they?
Savings, which is S, and the capital output ratio, which is K.
So the math is G equals S divided by K.
Precisely.
Growth equals savings divided by the capital output ratio. Let's decode that second part. The capital output ratio sounds incredibly technical.
It's just a measure of efficiency. It basically asks, how many units of capital-like machines or money do you need to produce 1 unit of output?
Give us an example.
Sure. If you need $4 worth of machinery to make $1 worth of bread, your ratio is 4 to 1.
So the lower ratio is actually better.
Yes, because it means you are more efficient. If you can make that same bread with only $2 of machinery, you are twice as efficient.
Makes sense.
So according to Harrod-Domar, if you want to grow your economy, You have two distinct levers to pull.
You either increase your savings, so you have more to invest.
Or you lower your capital output ratio, meaning you become more efficient with the capital you have.
But in 1951 India, we didn't exactly have cutting-edge technology.
No, we didn't, so we couldn't really lower the K very easily. We weren't efficient.
So the first plan had to focus heavily on the S savings.
Exactly. And it focused on the most basic fundamental need of a new nation, agriculture.
Because the country was literally hungry.
We had severe food shortages. So the first plan was all about dams, irrigation projects, and basically feeding the nation.
And according to the texts, it was actually quite successful, wasn't it?
Very successful. We hit a 3.6% growth rate against a target of just 2.1%.
So we started strong.
We did.
But then came the second plan, the Mahalanobis model. PC Mahalanobis. This feels like the moment the plot really thickens in Indian economic history.
This is absolutely the major turning point. The second plan from 1956 to 1961 shifted the focus entirely.
Away from agriculture.
Right. Mahalanobis argued that if you want to be self-reliant in the long run, you simply can't just keep importing your machines from the West.
You have to make them yourself.
Not just make them, you need to build the machines that make the machines.
Oh, wow.
This is what we call the capital goods sector.
Capital goods.
Think about it logically. If you want to expand agriculture, you need tractors.
Right.
But if you want to build tractors, you need steel.
And for steel, you need mining equipment.
Exactly. Mahalanobis said we must focus on the very bottom of that supply chain. Steel, mining, heavy power generation.
So instead of buying a tractor from abroad, we spend our money building the massive factory that makes the steel to eventually build the tractor.
Yes. But here is the catch, and this is what Vivek Singh highlights so well. That approach requires a massive sacrifice from the population.
A sacrifice? How so?
Because when the government invests millions in a massive steel plant, they are explicitly not investing that money in a clothing factory or a shoe factory.
Oh, I see.
You are sacrificing consumer goods today for capital goods that will only pay off decades tomorrow.
It's like putting all your money into a retirement account while you're currently starving.
Yeah.
It's smart for the future, but it is incredibly painful in the present.
It was very painful. This heavy industry focus led to a severe shortage of everyday consumer goods, which naturally caused inflation.
The prices for basic things went up.
Right. And there was actually a huge academic debate at the time about this. Two economists, Vakil and Brahmananda, heavily criticized the Mahalanobis approach.
What was their argument?
They proposed the wage goods model. They said, look, India is poor. People need wage goods, basic clothes, food, essential items.
Stuff they buy with their daily wages.
Exactly. They argued that if you pour all the nation's money into heavy machines, the poor will suffer massively from inflation and lack of basic goods.
That is a fascinating historical what if. What if we had followed the wage goods model instead?
It's a great debate topic, but ultimately Nehru and the government went with Mahalanobis.
And to be fair to that choice, it did create the industrial backbone of India.
It really did. The massive public sector undertakings, the PSUs like SAIL for steel and BHEL for electricals, they were born entirely from this specific vision.
But as we moved into the 1970s, the cracks started showing, didn't they?
Yes. The structural flaws became impossible to ignore.
The wealth wasn't trickling down.
Not nearly fast enough. You had this industrial growth happening in very isolated pockets, but the national poverty levels remained incredibly stubborn.
So the strategy had to change again.
Right. By the time we hit the sixth plan, the political and economic slogan shifted dramatically to Garibi Hatao.
Remove poverty.
Yes. The planners finally realized we needed direct welfare intervention. You couldn't just sit around and wait for a massive steel plant to magically make a rural farmer rich.
You needed to give that farmer direct support.
Exactly.
Okay, so that essentially sums up the directed phase.
Yeah.
The government is the driver, the mechanic, and the one owning the gas station.
Good analogy.
But then things changed fundamentally. We hit a wall. When did the government decide to finally step back and let someone else drive?
The transition was gradual, but it started taking root around the seventh plan in the mid-'80s. The Rajiv Gandhi era saw some very early, hesitant liberalization.
Just dipping a toe in the water.
Right. But the real structural paradigm shift was the eighth plan, which launched in 1992.
1992, so just right after the massive balance of payments crisis and the 1991 reforms.
Exactly. The crisis forced our hand. This ushered in phase 2 of our planning history, which is known as indicative planning.
Indicative planning. That word, indicative, it sounds much more like a gentle suggestion than a strict command. Like, we indicate that you should maybe build a factory.
That's effectively what it became. Under indicative planning, the state transitions from being the ultimate controller to being a facilitator.
A facilitator.
The government stops saying, you must build the specific factory here, and you must sell your product at this exact price.
Because that was the old license Raj system.
Yes. Instead, the government starts saying, okay, the country needs 10,000 megawatts of power over the next 5 years. We, the government, will create the tax breaks and clear the land laws so that you, the private sector, can come in and actually build it.
That is a massive psychological shift for the Indian bureaucracy. Giving up that level of absolute control must have been incredibly hard for them.
Oh, it was a massive cultural shock. And you see it clearly in the economic data.
What does the data show?
Well, by the 8th plan, which is closely associated with the Rao-Manmohan economic model, the public sector financial outlay dropped below 50% for the very first time. Wow.
The private sector was officially expected to be the primary engine of economic growth.
So what did the government do with its money then?
It focused its resources on social infrastructure, like health and education, and physical infrastructure, where the private sector might still hesitate to invest because the returns take too long.
So it's like the government moved from playing on the field to being the referee and the groundskeeper. They make sure the grass is cut and the rules are fair, but they don't actually kick the ball anymore.
That is exactly it. And this indicative approach continued right up until the very end of the Planning Commission's existence.
Speaking of the end, let's fast forward to the very final chapter of this specific era, the 12th five-year plan.
Right, running from 2012 to 2017.
It feels like the grand finale of a 65-year-old television show. What was the overarching vibe or mission statement of this final plan?
The 12th plan is so crucial for students to understand because it perfectly encapsulates the modern challenge of India.
If the second plan was obsessed with heavy industry, the 12th plan was obsessed with people. Its official theme was very specific: faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth.
Faster, sustainable, and more inclusive growth. Those are heavy loaded words.
Very much so.
Let's focus on inclusive growth. That phrase gets thrown around constantly in newspapers and political speeches. What did the textbook actually define it as?
Sanjeev Verma and Vivek Singh both emphasize a critical distinction here. Growth on its own is just the raw GDP number getting bigger.
Right.
Inclusive growth is about specifically who gets to eat a slice of that bigger pie.
Okay.
You can theoretically have 10% GDP growth, but if that new wealth only benefits the top 1% or just the IT sector concentrated in Bangalore, it is fundamentally not inclusive.
So it's about making sure the benefits are broad-based.
Yes. It implies a measurable, verifiable reduction in poverty, a reduction in income inequality, and a reduction in regional imbalances.
Regional imbalances are huge in India.
Massive. Inclusive growth focuses heavily on equality of opportunity. It means making sure a kid born in a remote tribal village in Jharkhand has the exact same baseline access to health, education, and skill development as a kid born in South Mumbai.
It sounds wonderful on paper. It really does. But did the Planning Commission actually have a way to measure this inclusivity? Or was it just a political wish list of nice-sounding things?
Oh, they were incredibly specific. They didn't just use rhetoric. They laid out exactly 25 monitorable targets.
25 of them.
Yes. This was essentially a giant performance dashboard for the entire nation. And looking closely at these specific targets gives you a very clear snapshot of exactly where India was struggling at the time.
Give us the highlights. What were the actual numbers they were chasing in this 12th plan?
Well, starting with the macroeconomy, they targeted a real GDP growth rate of 8.2%.
8.2. Ambitious.
Very. But interestingly, they had highly specific targets for individual sectors. They wanted agriculture to grow at 4.0%.
4%. That actually seems a bit low compared to the 8% overall target. Why aim so low?
It actually isn't low at all. It's incredibly ambitious for the agricultural sector.
Really?
Yes. Farming is structurally very difficult to grow at a rapid pace. It's dependent on weather, land size, so many rigid factors.
That makes sense.
But here is the critical part. Because nearly 50% of our national workforce is tied to agriculture, if that specific sector doesn't grow, baseline poverty simply does not go down. So achieving 4% growth in agriculture is arguably much more important for actual poverty reduction than hitting 12% growth in corporate services.
That is a phenomenal insight from the text. What about the job market?
The targets there were massive. They aimed to create 50 million new non-farm jobs.
50 million. That is literally the entire population of South Korea.
So it's a staggering number to even comprehend. And notice they specified non-farm jobs.
Why the distinction?
Because the goal was to structurally pull surplus labor out of the overburdened agricultural sector and move them into manufacturing or services where productivity is higher.
Right. What about the social indicators?
The social targets were even more aggressive. They wanted to reduce the absolute poverty headcount by a full 10 percentage points.
10 points is huge. And health.
The health targets were very strict. They targeted reducing the infant mortality rate, or IMR, down to 25, and the maternal mortality ratio, MMR, down to 1 per 1,000 live births.
Those are critical markers of a nation's baseline health.
Absolutely. They also had a very specific monitored target to reduce undernutrition in children aged 0 to 3 years to exactly half of the previous NFHS-3 survey levels.
They were really drilling down into the data. I'm looking at our notes here, and I see infrastructure targets too.
Yes, physical infrastructure was huge. They wanted overall investment in infrastructure to reach 9% of the total GDP.
9% of GDP is a massive amount of capital.
We are talking huge investments in roads, ports, and power generation. They specifically aim to connect all villages with all-weather roads.
Which changes the local economy overnight.
Completely. And importantly for the future, they set a target for financial inclusion, aiming for 90% of all households to have access to banking services.
Wait, 90% banking access? That specific target really set the stage for the massive UPI and digital India revolution we live in today, didn't it?
It absolutely did. This was the necessary precursor to schemes like the Jan Dhan Yojana and the government's massive push for direct benefit transfers.
Because you simply can't transfer welfare money directly to a citizen if they don't even exist in the banking system.
Exactly. The plumbing had to be built first.
So, incredibly high ambitions. But we all know it wasn't smooth sailing. The 12th plan didn't just magically fix everything in India.
Definitely not.
What were the hurdles? According to Sanjeev Verma, why was this so incredibly hard to pull off in reality?
The challenges they faced were deeply structural, and honestly, they are the exact reasons that eventually led to the rethink of the entire planning system.
What was the biggest one?
First and foremost, there was the massive crisis of quantity versus quality, especially in health and education.
Ah, the classic building without providing the service problem.
Exactly that. We successfully built the physical school buildings across the country, so naturally, basic enrollment numbers shot up.
Looks great on paper.
But the actual learning outcomes, they stayed completely flat, and in some regions, they even dipped.
Kids were in school but not actually learning to read.
Right. We built rural health clinics, but the assigned doctors simply weren't showing up to work. The 12th plan fundamentally struggled to shift the bureaucratic focus from mere outlays, which is just money spent, to actual outcomes, which are the real results achieved on the ground.
And I imagine the regional divide was only getting worse during this time.
It was widening significantly, and this was a major glaring failure of the centralized planning model itself.
Yes.
The economic gap between the developed southern and western states and the northern and eastern states, particularly the northeast region, was actively growing.
So the rising tide was not lifting all boats.
Not at all. The one-size-fits-all approach of central planning just wasn't fixing this. A rigid policy designed by a bureaucrat in Delhi might work perfectly for Tamil Nadu, but it could fail completely in Bihar because the ground realities, the state capacity, are entirely different.
Which leads us perfectly to the death of the Planning Commission itself.
The end of an era.
It really was. It had been there for 65 years. It was an institution. I mean, the furniture in that building was probably antique.
Oh, without a doubt.
So why kill it? Why replace this historic institution with NITI Aayog?
It was a massive shift, but expert analysis strongly suggests it was necessary. The Planning Commission had simply become anachronistic.
Outdated.
Too rigid for a modern globalized economy. But the biggest, most fatal flaw was structural. It was fundamentally top-down.
Top-down. Break that down for us. Explain how that top-down approach actually looked in practice for a state.
Sure. Imagine you are the chief minister of a sovereign state in India.
Okay, I'm the CM.
You know your state intimately. You know you desperately need better local water management right now.
Because my farmers are suffering.
Right. But the Planning Commission up in Delhi looks at their national master plan and says, no, the national priority this cycle is highway building. So take this block of money, but you can only spend it on highways.
Wow. Even though I need water infrastructure.
Exactly. You had unelected bureaucrats in Delhi micromanaging how a specific district in Kerala or Assam should spend its development funds.
And the states obviously hated that.
They absolutely despised it. Chief ministers, who are elected leaders, were often reduced to literally pleading for funds in Delhi.
So much for federalism.
Right. It was frequently described in the press as a begging bowl situation. It fundamentally did not respect the federal structure of India.
Because the Planning Commission held the purse strings.
And because they held the money, they held all the power. NITI Aayog was explicitly born to flip this entire dynamic on its head.
Enter NITI Aayog, the National Institution for Transforming India.
The new paradigm.
So is it just a clever name change? Like, did they just paint the outside of the Ajanta Bhavan building and change the letterhead?
No, it is fundamentally and structurally different in both its function and its mandate. Sanjeev Verma outlines this very clearly.
What's the core difference?
The most critical difference you have to grasp is this. The Planning Commission was a fund-allocating body. NITI Aayog is a think tank.
A think tank.
It does not allocate funds to states at all.
Wait, if they don't control the money anymore, what do they actually do? And who does control the money now?
The actual power to allocate financial funds was moved squarely to the Finance Ministry where it belongs.
Okay.
NITI Aayog is left to focus entirely on strategy, policy formulation, and real-time monitoring.
It acts as the brain, not the bank.
That is exactly the distinction.
That is a huge structural difference. So they are the master strategists now.
Precisely. And their internal structure completely reflects this new reality. The chairperson is still the prime minister, which ensures it retains heavy political weight.
Right.
But the governing council is where the real magic happens now.
Who is on the governing council?
It comprehensively includes the chief ministers of all the states and the lieutenant governors of all the union territories.
So everyone is actually at the table now.
Everyone. In the old planning commission system, there was something called the National Development Council, or NDC.
Yeah, I've seen that in the textbook.
But the NDC met very rarely and was practically just a rubber stamp for what the commission had already decided.
I see.
In NITI Aayog, this governing council is the actual engine of what we now call cooperative federalism.
Okay, let's pause right there. We hear those buzzwords a lot in the news and in UPSC essays. Cooperative federalism and also competitive federalism.
They are very important concepts.
I feel like students often get these two mixed up. Can we strictly define and separate them?
Definitely. Let's start with cooperative federalism. This simply means the center and the states working together as genuine equals.
Team India.
Exactly, the Team India concept. It means actively solving structural problems together.
Give me a real-world example.
For instance, if there is a complex cross-state river management issue or a massive trade corridor that needs to cross 3 different states.
Stuff that causes administrative nightmares.
Right. NITI Aayog provides the neutral platform for those states and the center to sit down, share data, and resolve it collaboratively. It explicitly acknowledges that the central government simply cannot rule a modern India without the active cooperation of the states.
Okay, so cooperative federalism is about holding hands and working together. What about competitive federalism?
This is the idea that states should actively compete with each other to be better governed.
Like a friendly rivalry.
Like a fierce race to the top.
How does NTI actually make them compete?
NET fosters this by creating highly public indices and rankings.
Ah, the scoreboards.
Yes. For example, if Gujarat is doing exceptionally well in water management, NITI collects the data and publishes a public report highlighting it.
And then what happens?
Well, the CM of Kerala sees that and immediately wants to implement policies to beat them next year. The CM of Bihar sees it, realizes they are near the bottom, and knows exactly which metrics they need to urgently improve.
It uses data and total transparency to relentlessly drive performance.
Precisely. It turns vague governance into verifiable public performance metrics.
Because if you are a chief minister heading into an election, you really don't want your state to be at the absolute bottom of the National Health Index.
It looks terrible in the local newspapers.
That's a remarkably smart psychological tool for governance.
It is very effective.
So let's look at what NITI Aayog has actually done since it was created. We've talked a lot about theory. What are the specific initiatives on the ground that students desperately need to know for the exam?
There are several key flagship initiatives heavily detailed in our sources. One of the most successful and most frequently discussed is the Aspirational Districts Program.
The ADP. I've read a lot about this. This program focuses purely on the most backward areas of the country, right?
Yes, it targets 115 deeply backward districts.
But haven't we always had programs for backward districts? What makes NITI's approach so special?
The approach is totally unique. In the past, the government would just blindly pour extra funds into these districts and hope for the best.
The old outlay focus.
Right. NITI Aayog instead monitors these specific districts on 49 crucial real-time indicators.
Real time.
Very close to it. They track health, nutrition, education outcomes, agricultural productivity, basic infrastructure. Everything is data-driven.
And how do they measure success?
Here is the genius part. They use what is called a delta ranking.
Delta. In math, delta means change, right?
Exactly. They don't just lazily rank who is currently the best overall.
Because obviously, a historically wealthy district would always win that ranking.
Right. It wouldn't be fair. Instead, they rank who has improved the most in that specific month.
Oh, wow.
So a historically very poor district in rural Odisha that rapidly improves its local vaccination rates in a single quarter can actually be ranked #1 nationally.
That's brilliant. It explicitly rewards effort and recent progress, not just legacy wealth.
Exactly. It highly motivates the district collectors working on the actual ground. It literally gamifies development for the bureaucrats.
What else do they have going on?
Then there is the SATH initiative, SATH, which stands for Sustainable Action for Transforming Human Capital.
SF. That word implies support or companionship in Hindi.
And that's exactly what it is. Under this specific program, NITI Aayog deeply handholds specific state governments to help them structurally rebuild their health and education systems.
How is that different from what the Planning Commission did?
The Planning Commission would just send a PDF report highlighting flaws. NITI Aayog actually sends teams of technical experts to work directly alongside the state's own civil servants to fix the administrative plumbing.
They get their hands dirty.
Very much so.
And for innovation. I know NETI has a massive focus on tech and startups.
You're thinking of the Atal Innovation Mission, or AIM.
AIM.
This is a huge push. Through AIM, they're setting up thousands of tinkering labs in high schools across all of India.
Tinkering labs, like places for kids to go fix broken radios?
No, places for creating new things. They are dedicated labs where young students can freely play with 3D printers, advanced robotics kits, and modern electronics.
In high school?
Yes, they are trying to fundamentally create a widespread culture of innovation right at the school level.
Catch 'em young.
Exactly. And for the older demographic, they heavily fund and support advanced incubation centers for tech startups. The entire macro idea is to slowly turn India from a massive nation of job seekers into a nation of job creators.
And you mentioned the rankings earlier, the report cards for the states.
Yes, the various indices. These are absolute gold for potential prelims questions, by the way.
Let's list a few of the critical ones.
Well, there's the Composite Water Management Index. This report literally forced states to confront their grim water reality.
Because it showed that many major Indian cities were rapidly heading for day zero water depletion.
Exactly. Then there is the School Education Quality Index, or CQI.
Which focuses strictly on learning outcomes, not just school building enrollment.
Correct. Then you have the Major Health Index, branded as Health States, Progressive India, which rigorously ranks states purely on health delivery outcomes.
And the big international one.
The SDG India Index. This one painstakingly tracks exactly how Indian states are progressing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
It really seems like NITI Aayog operates as a massive data mirror to the states, holding it up and showing them exactly what they look like compared to their immediate neighbors.
That's a beautiful and accurate way to put it. It's both a mirror and a technical mentor.
Now, we talked about how they abolished the 5-year time frame. What did they replace it with?
They moved completely away from the rigid 5-year block structure. Now, NITI employs a 3-tiered approach: a vision, a strategy, and an action agenda.
Break those time frames down for us.
They map out a 15-year overall vision document for the long term. Under that, there is a 7-year strategy document for the medium term.
Okay.
And finally, a highly specific 3-year action agenda for the immediate short term.
That seems vastly more flexible than being locked into a rigid 5-year plan no matter what happens in the world.
It fits the volatile modern world much better. I mean, 5 years is an absolute lifetime in modern technology.
A completely new industry can be born in 5 years.
Exactly. The 3-year action agenda allows the government to make rapid mid-course corrections.
Without having to scrap an entire 5-year plan.
Right. And this entire flexible framework is often referred to now in the broader political context of the Amrit Kaal vision.
Amrit Kaal, planning for the next 25 years up to the year 2047.
Yeah.
Now, for our listeners who are actively grinding and tackling the UPSC exams, and I know many of you are listening right now for exactly this targeted reason, how do we directly connect all this fascinating history to the actual exam questions?
It is incredibly vital to link this theory to the actual exam pattern.
How does UPSC test this material?
Let's start with the mains exam. In mains, the questions are almost always conceptual and deeply analytical.
They aren't going to ask for simple lists.
Rarely. They will almost never just list the 5 objectives of the 12th plan. That's too simple.
So what do they ask?
They absolutely love interrogating the core concept of inclusive growth.
Right.
For instance, in 2019, there was a specific mains question asking about the overarching strategy of inclusive growth and its direct link to environmental sustainability.
So you can't just memorize a definition. You have to actively argue how the mechanisms actually work together.
Exactly.
So using the specific data points from our 12th plan discussion, like the concrete targets for rural health, universal banking, and non-farm jobs, would be key evidence for a high-scoring answer there.
Absolutely. Casually citing those specific monitorable targets adds immense academic weight to your answer. It proves to the examiner that you know the hard data.
What's another common mains theme?
A very standard, recurring theme is asking candidates to critically compare the Legacy Planning Commission directly with the new NITI Aayog.
That feels like a classic distinguish between style question.
It is, but you have to elevate it. You need to articulate the philosophical shifts clearly.
Give me the keywords.
You must discuss the shift from top-down to bottom-up.
Right.
From simple fund allocation to acting as a specialized think tank. From a command and control economy to fostering cooperative and competitive federalism.
If you reliably use those exact keywords, you score the marks.
Yes, the examiner is actively scanning your paper for those precise terms.
And what about for the prelims?
Prelims is an entirely different beast. It focuses heavily on hard facts and tricky institutional details.
What kind of traps did they set?
You might get a multiple-choice question on the exact administrative structure of NITI Aayog. For example, they'll ask exactly who sits on the governing council.
And we know it's all CMs and UTLT governors.
Right. Or they love asking about constitutional status. They might ask, is NITI Aayog a constitutional body?
Is it? Let's clarify that right now.
No, it is absolutely not.
Yeah.
That is a classic UPSC trap.
Okay, good catch. What is it then?
It is merely an executive body. It was created simply by a cabinet resolution. It is nowhere in the actual Constitution.
The big crucial distinction.
They also regularly ask about the specific schemes and reports. A classic format is, who officially releases the Composite Water Management Index?
And you need to instantly know it's NITI Aayog, not the Ministry of Jal Shakti.
Exactly. They also drill down into the details of the Aspirational Districts Program, asking about the Delta ranking concept, or the specifics of the Atal Innovation Mission.
So, practically speaking, memorizing the specific reports and indices released by NITI is a very likely 2-mark gain in your prelims.
Definitely. It's high-yield material. And please do not forget the historical models we discussed.
The Harrod-Domar and Mahalanobis stuff.
Yes. Knowing definitively that the Harrod-Domar model anchored the first plan and Mahalanobis anchored the second plan is classic baseline matching question material for prelims.
This has really been a fantastic journey today.
That's a huge arc of history.
We've literally traveled from the desperate scarcity of 1947, where we were scraping together baseline savings just to build basic irrigation dams, all the way to the hyper-data-driven, competitive federalism landscape of today.
It really is a remarkable story of national economic evolution.
We started with a massive big push simply because we had to.
We built those massive heavy industries because absolutely no one else in the private sector had the capacity to do it.
But then, as the economy slowly matured and grew complex, the state wisely learned to step back.
It's very much like parenting, if you think about it.
How so?
When the child is a toddler, you have to hold their hand everywhere they go, or they'll walk into traffic.
Right, that's the direct and planning phase.
But when they become a teenager, you eventually have to give them the car keys and trust them.
Mostly trust them.
Right, mostly. And hopefully you give them a really good map.
And that map is what NITI Aayog is trying to provide today.
Exactly. Planning itself hasn't disappeared from India. It has just evolved to meet the times. In an incredibly complex, fast-moving, globalized economy, we simply don't need allocative planning, where a tired bureaucrat is literally counting how many shoes a factory produces.
I need broad strategic planning.
Yes. We need to figure out exactly how to systematically navigate climate change, the rise of artificial intelligence, and massive, unprecedented urbanization.
The overarching goal of the nation remains exactly the same as it was in 1947, a fully developed, truly inclusive India.
Absolutely. But the administrative methods and the economic tools have received a massive upgrade.
A developed, inclusive India. That is the ultimate destination we are all still driving toward.
Indeed it is. And for everyone listening right now, I want you to think about this final point. We successfully moved from rigid 5-year plans to a flexible 15-year vision.
Right.
But in a modern world that is fundamentally changing this rapidly, is even a 3-year action agenda too long?
Wow.
The existential challenge for the future of Indian governance isn't just about making a good plan. It's about agility.
How fast can the plan change when the entire world changes overnight?
Exactly. How quickly can a nation of 1 billion people pivot? That's something serious for you to chew on as you study.
That is an incredibly provocative thought to end on. Agility and national planning. Thank you so much for breaking this massive topic down with us today.
It was absolutely my pleasure.
And a huge thank you to you, the listener, for sticking with us through this deep dive. We really hope this clarified the massive, complex machinery working behind the scenes of the Indian economy.
It's a lot to take in, but it's essential knowledge.
Before you go, just a really quick reminder to please subscribe to Simplified UPSC by PPP on YouTube.
Yeah, it really helps the channel grow and reach more students.
It does. And if you genuinely found value here today, if you had one of those great aha moments while listening, please consider supporting us on Patreon.
It literally keeps the lights on and ensures these deep dives keep coming to your feed.
Also, do not forget to grab your free study notes and practice those PYQs on our Telegram channel. The link is usually right down in the description.
Highly recommend checking those out.
And for the really serious learners out there, the ones who want to absolutely crush those mains answers we talked about, join the private Telegram library for organized, premium notes, and model mains answers.
Just DM us on the public channel to get access.
Please like, share, and keep learning. We will see you all in the very next deep dive.